Hey, Chris Pies here. Will you join us for the new PCA Sim Racing Classroom for Series 11? We have a brand new racing series upon us at the beginning of this year. We're starting right on the first week of 2024, so Happy New Year. Wherever you're watching this, we are going to be talking about not only the new series, which is up on the screen on our webpage, but we'll also be talking about and doing a track walk for Spa Francorchamps, which is the first race, or the first location for the race. As always, or not as always, but as our past few series have been, we are going to be running a one make series in the 992 GT3R across 4 different classes. Challenge and Sport will be using fixed setups, and then Club and Pro will be using open setups. All races are 40 minutes, I believe. What I wanted to do is bring up the page here so we can kind of take a look just at the format in general, and maybe address any concerns that anybody might have before we get started later this week. So as I said before, the car is going to be the GT3, specifically the GT3R for Porsche. Fuel is going to be limited so that you are forced to take a pit stop and have a little bit of strategy in there. Tires, no tires, is always a big question on whether or not you want to do it. In general, basically, if you've got to take above 7 gallons of gas, you can take 2 tires for free. They change at the same time. Anything under 7 gallons and you can't get away, you will be waiting on tires instead of fuel. So it's up to you whether you want to change them or not. But we can talk about that more later in either another classroom or offline if anybody wants to know strategies from that. You're going to have one fast repair, which, so if you wreck your car, you have a problem, you come down pit lane or get a tow and get a brand new car to keep on racing. The dates and the tracks, we're going to be, I think it's bi-weekly. I'm taking a look here. No, it's
correct.
It's bi-weekly. Okay. Because we've got the dates on here are kind of all over the place on the website. So event 1 Spa December 4th, VIR July 4th.
Those are race times.
Race times. Okay, that makes sense.
Right.
Okay.
That's not the schedule. That is the date and the weather in advance and the setup for all of the tracks.
There you go. I was about to say, we've already apparently had the first race. Okay, perfect. So right here on the website, if you go to pcasimracing.com/series-11, you can see the specifics on each of the events. We're going to go Spa, VIR, Red Bull Ring, Road America, Zandvoort, Mugello, and Daytona to finish it off in event 7. Bi-weekly races. So basically, your class that you're racing in will race every other week. And then the other 2 classes will be racing on the off weeks. So we have races every week, but you're specifically going to be racing every other week. 2-minute practice.
The schedule's at the top right.
Okay, and the schedule's up at the top right in this nice little table here. The event format, you got 10 minutes for practice, so when the server goes live, you got 10 minutes to join and load in. You'll have a 10-minute lone qualifying, which will be made up of 3 laps, and then you have a 40-minute race after that. There will be 1 drop race for the series, and all communications are going to be done in iRacing. No need to be on Discord if you don't want to. Usually there's a contingent of folks that do sit on Discord to chat or give information to each other, especially if you're like in a team or you have other friends, but it's not required. One of the things that I wanted to highlight, and we had a bit of a question before we started recording for today's classroom, was full course yellows. They are possible in this series. We don't have a full course, or at least I don't see a full course yellow procedure, but I can give you some information about how it tends to work in iRacing. So if you get a full course yellow in iRacing, basically Race Control will throw it. It says throw full course yellow. You will get a yellow flag. I think it's in the top left is the standard, but you can move them around. But you'll get a yellow flag icon on your screen, as well as where you see whenever you leave or enter or leave pit lane, you get like the pit speed limiter and your speed, and then the pit speed limit box that'll pop up. Usually it's right in the middle of your screen unless you've moved it. when a full course yellow comes out, you will get a very similar little black box right in the middle of your vision if you haven't moved it, saying you're under full course yellow. And that will give you specific instructions on what you need to do. So for instance, if you are coming up on a car that needs to be passed because they're a lap down or so, it will tell you pass car number, and then it'll give you a number. It will tell you also what, if we're doing double wide restarts, it will tell you what lane you need to be in for the restart. If we're doing single file, then it'll just say stay behind a certain number of car. If you want to see what the procedure kind of looks like or how iRacing is going to handle it, you can go and load up like an AI race. And then as the admin, you can throw the yellow yourself, like on lap 1, and you can see what iRacing will do to implement the full course yellow and what it kind of looks like and what you need to obey. But the gist of it, the short and simple sweet of it, is follow the black box in front of you that tells you where you need to be, and you'll be good. So if it says stay behind car 39 and car 39 is right in front of you, then you stay behind car 39. Pit lane should be open for any full course yellows. So if full course yellow comes out, you want to pit, you should be able to do it. There will be a pit lane open or closed. It's either in red or green, so you can choose to do it. If not, if it does say red, pit lane closed, don't pit there, or you may get an end of line penalty, which means you go to the back of the bus on restart. So that's kind of the gist of it. Are there any questions on full course yellows? Something that I'm missing?
How about the restart?
Do you know the how the ordering is established? Is it at the instant of the full course yellow, or does it go back to like the last time line was crossed or something like that?
It should be when the flag is thrown. I don't think they do. I don't think iRacing does last timing line specifically. There's not a lot of full course yellows in road courses, so it's a little bit of an unknown. But usually what ends up happening, like for instance, I think in oval racing, is basically as soon as the flag is thrown, it's a snapshot of the field at that time. Any cars that are involved in the wreck, i.e. they've spun or have come to a stop, for instance, are ruled as back of the line. They're not paused there, for instance. So if you wreck, calls a full course yellow, go get a new car, you don't get to start back where you were when the wreck happened, when the flag got thrown. You will be at the back of the line. So that's the only thing that I know, but I don't know specifically how the timing works. At the end of the day, it's kind of it'd be nice. Would it be nice to know? Yeah, it's kind of academic, but at the end of the day, everybody's playing by the same rules. There's no way to really game the system. Everybody's going to be in the same boat of however iRacing determines it. On restarts, Jim, there may need to be a little bit more of a clean description of this, because we've got race starts here. It says races start when iRacing throws the green flag, and drivers should maintain pace car speed until green, but that's for race start. I don't know if that's also applying to restarts as well. So we may need to say under full course yellow, restart procedure in accordance with race start procedure, and then it would be just like the race is starting again.
Right. Okay.
That's how I assume.
I'll mention that to. Yeah, I'll mention it to DJ, and we'll get some better wording for it up there so everybody's clear. We hope we don't ever have to throw a full course yellow. It's not us. It is race control doing it. Nobody in iRacing in the league has any control over that whatsoever. So DJ will make the call if it's absolutely dire, but we seriously doubt we'll ever need it. But it's good to know that we have it.
Yeah, exactly. The restart will be exactly like the race start. It's just you'll see in the little black box 1 to go, and what that means is that next time by the pace car will pull in, and you will be starting as though you were starting the race in general. The other question I've personally have is whether the restart would be 2 abreast or single file. I don't see it on the website on which is which, so. I'm assuming single file, just because we're not running NASCAR. We're running road courses, and I don't know of a road course that runs 2 abreast after or under full course yellow. So anyway, something.
Yeah, all road courses run single, but we'll make sure that's in the wording as well.
Okay.
I think it was season 9. Club had a full course yellow at Canada, and it was double file. I would like single file as well.
Yeah,
but
exactly. I think it's
that was just
it's
data
an
point.
option in when you set up the server, so on restarts. So anyway, it's just a couple of things to keep like I said, and like Jim said, or ideally we'll never even see one, right? But if it does happen, follow the black box in front of you. And if there are any questions that you have on there, you can always talk to DJ during the pacing to make sure that, you know, if you have any questions on how best to do this. But if you follow that black box, iRacing will not penalize you for anything. If you don't follow the black box, then you run risk of iRacing giving you some sort of penalty. And if that happens, you may or may not, DJ may not clear it because iRacing is the one that gave it to you. So
DJ says to be determined, single or double file. So I guess he's going to come to the steering committee.
copy that. Cool.
Chris, if it happens when the refuel window is open, do you know how it works to dive into the pit and do your normal refuel?
Yeah, so you will have I know how it works in oval racing, and because again we don't see a whole lot of full course yellows in road racing. On the oval side, you know, if pit lane is closed and you dive down pit lane because you need fuel, for instance, like you have to do it, you will get a penalty, but the penalty is not like a stop and hold or a drive through or anything. The penalty is an end of line penalty, basically meaning that you will go to the end of the line on the restart, which should be the way it is, right? You should, when you pit, have to go back to the end of the line because the whole field should be passing you while you're in the pit lane. So that's the kind of penalty, and that's the thing that may happen if you pit and pit lane is closed. However, if it's not closed or it's open during the stop, then you're free to stop whenever you want. But yeah, if you've got to take fuel, you got to take fuel. But the worst that's going to happen is you're going to be where you should be, which is at the back of the pack, behind the people that didn't pit. Cool. All right. Fun stuff. The other thing I would suggest give a good read through the Series 11 rules. There's things about, you know, penalty licenses, LLPs, and all this. In other words, if you're a bad boy or a bad girl, you may get some penalties thrown your way. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world. You know, for instance, there's a lot of lenient. You got to be pretty bad to get any kind of serious punishment that comes down from it. But take a look at it. It tells you the process and how many LPPs you have to get before something actually bad happens. And usually we've been doing this for almost a year now, or over a year, and I don't know if we've ever had anybody get into the hot water area. So, but it's always good to know that that exists, so we can keep ourselves in check. All right, cool. Let me load up the replay that I put. So again, for the track walks and stuff, the people that tend to get the most value out of this are the challenge and sport drivers that are running fixed setups. So what I did was I ran with the fixed setup for the purpose of the replay. So you can kind of see what the car is doing or what maybe it's capable of with that setup.
Hey, Chris, while this is loading, is there anything that I gotta do on my end to make Discord display your screen better? It's a little.
If it's very small, double click my little screen.
It is open. It's just not.
Oh, is it kind of blurry?
Yeah, it's pretty grainy.
Is it kind of grainy?
Yeah.
It might be my connection.
Yeah, it's a little blurry.
Yeah, same here. It's quite blurry.
Let's see here.
Do you have a free account, Chris? I think that's the difference. When you pay money, you get better resolution.
Oh, is that how it works? Well, I have a free account. I don't have the
Pretty
Nitro.
sure that's it.
Okay, so they've downgraded me. Oh no. The other alternative you can go to my Twitch channel because I'm streaming live there, and it should be full.
Yeah, it's fine.
flavor.
It's fine on Twitch, and if you're twitching and Discord streaming at the same time, Discord pays the price.
Oh, is it? Okay. So I got to do it because sometimes we fill up here. So if you want something clearer, you can always open up the Twitch account or twitch.com. Here, I'll put it in the discussion just so it's easier to see. So twitch.tv/racing lawyer. right there. If you copy that into your browser, you can see it on Twitch and it should be clear. So I apologize for the grainy footage here on Discord, but it's the price we
Oh,
pay.
no need to apologize, man. Thank you.
All right. So let's talk about Spa. Spa is a famous track. We've covered it plenty of times in PCA sim racing, I think with multiple cars at this point. And probably, I know for sure in the old 991.2 GT3R. But we'll take it again in the in this car as well. The thing to remember about Spa is super high fast corners and big long straightaways. So lots of time to be able to set up passes, draft on an opponent, and good opportunities to beat somebody on the braking into some of these really technical sections of the track. We're all running the same setup, so there is no going to be advantages where some cars are fast in the corners but slow on the straight, and some cars are fast on the straight and slow in the corners. So you won't have that kind of accordion. Everybody's going to be playing with the same kit. So those advantages should be minimalized, so it should come down to driver. High downforce setting in this car on this track makes some of the turns that are sketchy. So Blanchimont, for instance, or Eau Rouge, pretty trivial. Everything's pretty much flat. I will say with a caveat though, track conditions can change. We don't know exactly what the track temp is going to be. If it is really, really hot, for instance, then there's going to be less grip available. And there may be a situation where you're going through Blanchimont and you may have to lift, for instance, rather than keep it pinned. But from what I could tell on this particular conditions, which is as cold a track as you possibly can have, it was easy flat through both sections after the first lap. So I'll bring that up a little bit more when we get there. But yeah, with that, we'll just give it a start, and we'll start on in here. So coming out of the bus stop, start finish for the lap is going to be pretty darn early coming out of bus stop, and that is actually right here. So keep that in mind, especially if you're fighting somebody on the last lap for position. Start finish is very soon. It is not the bridge down here where the flagman is. It is way, way earlier. So that's the start line basically for the race. This is the finish line for the race. It's a split. It's not the same line. Going down into turn one. Turn one is incredibly important because it leads to the longest straightaway on the entire track. So La Source is the most important corner on the track. We need to have a good run through here. We need to maintain our momentum so we can get a good run coming out, back to full throttle, and we maintain full throttle all the way down basically the straightaway, which I think we're going to hit like 158, maybe tickle 159 miles an hour. If we get a bad run through La Source, we are going to carry that bad run all the way down that straightaway, which is going to cause problems, and you're going to suffer your lap time. We've got some decent brake markers here, but they're way over to the left. Our vision shouldn't be out here to the left. Our vision should be where we want to go. So I always find that these brake markers on the left, while they're apparent, I don't see them when I drive. Instead, what I'm looking for is I'm looking at this dirt that's on the track. I noticed this like tan area. It's just discoloration on the track. My brake point is basically right before the end of the discoloration. So it's right about here. If you're looking at the marker, it's going to be just before the 100 marker is where I'm braking. I find that if I brake too far after the discoloration, I overshoot the corner and I overcook it, and my lap time suffers. So I'm braking pretty much right at the end of the discoloration here, and it's going to be a full-on, we need to stop this car. So full-on threshold braking, 10 pedal. And then as we turn in, we get our braking done in a straight line, because remember, as the car is going straight, the tires are not turning, so we're not asking any lateral G-force grip from the tires. We're going to ask all of the tires grip to slowing the car down. So no steering angle, dead straight, use it to brake the car. As we start to get to the point where we need to turn in for this corner, as we turn in the steering wheel, we have to start bleeding off the brake and trail braking into the corner. If we keep a heavy brake and turn the steering wheel at the same time, the car is just going to plow and understeer forward because the front tires are beyond their grip. They can't do both at the same time. So as you can see here with my telemetry on the bottom left, threshold brake, but as I get to the point of turn in, I'm starting to bleed off the brake, and then as I've done my full turn in and I've got the most amount of lock in the car, which is right here 90 degrees, I've almost got zero brake in the car. So at this point, I am off the brake. I want all of the grip from the tires to be in lateral grip as opposed to braking grip. And I want to start rolling that speed through. There's a lot of camber on the inside of turn 1. Notice you can see a ton of the track. The more track we can see, the more camber that is available to us. And the tighter we can get down here, the more we can take advantage of that bowl as we come through. We get back on throttle and we pick it up in first gear relatively quickly, so pretty much right at the apex. Careful not to just mash the throttle like a monkey, because we can spin the rear tires, or at least engage traction control, which will hamper our run out coming out of the corner. As we go to that full throttle, we need to allow the grip to have, we need the tires to have more grip to apply it to the ground to accelerate out of the corner. The only way we can do that is we have to be releasing our steering angle. If we've got that half or 90-degree steering angle in the car and then jam on the pedal, we're just going to hit traction control because the rear tires are going to say, I don't have that grip to give. I've given it to you in lateral G's and also acceleration. I can't do both, one or the other. So as we unwind the wheel, we start pushing the pedal at the same time until we're straight or relatively straight and we're on full throttle coming out.
Chris, as you come in,
First or second?
First gear through there.
and when you were slashing, when you were going the full pedal, you were still on first gear, right? You were stretching the first and then switching to gear at the top of RPM.
Correct. Yes. You're going to wind it out. This car's going slow enough to where you can definitely get into first gear here. So if I stop pausing it, so it's brake, 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 release the brake, turn in, 90-degree, roll the speed through, start feeding on the throttle, and then as the car rear end starts to grip and you start unwinding the wheel, you should be full throttle to get a good run coming out of the corner. The tendency through turn 1 is to overslow the car, and you tend to overslow the car for two reasons. One, you go too deep into the corner, and if you go too deep into the corner, you're just standing on the brake trying to get the car to slow down, and then by the time the car actually slows down and you get it to turn, you've parked the car. The other tendency to overslow is you just don't take enough speed and you're not using all the track. You should end up out here on track out because that's the only place the car can go because that's how fast you're going. If you don't want to drive out here, like actively drive the car out there, you want to have the car end up there through lateral acceleration. All right, so let's assume we get through turn 1 nice and beautifully. We're going to run down to Eau Rouge. Comment about Eau Rouge here is, 1, it's fast, and 2, don't take it too wide. Try to work with the people that are around you to make sure that you're taking it single file. Taking it too wide is just asking to bang doors and end up in a wreck on the top of the hill, and we don't want to see that. So if somebody's on your inside, give a lift, let them go, follow them through. If you give a lift and follow the other car through, guess what? You get a draft all the way from the top of the run all the way down into the right-hander at the end of the straight, and you probably can get by them on the Kimmel just from the draft if you do it right. So being second through Eau Rouge is actually a benefit if you time it right. You don't have to always be the first car through there. I will also say with that going through La Source as well, it's very tempting to dive somebody going into La Source because the track is so wide. The problem is that even if you successfully make a pass going through La Source, you're going to be slower through there because you've made an offline move. You're not on the ideal line. And the car that you just passed may have a better line or have a better run coming out of the corner, and they're just going to pass you at the end of the Kimmel anyway. So the move that you made is going to be given back up, usually by the end of the Kimmel. The best place to pass is on the Kimmel itself. All right, so if we're coming down into Eau Rouge, the thing to keep in mind here is, 1, you don't have to be all the way out to the right side of the wall. You can take it from mid-track. There's no advantage being all the way over here to the right. So just try. You see a lot of people just sit with their right mirror and their right fenders on the wall. You don't need to open up the left-hander at all. All you need to do is end up with the car here. Basically, left side tires on the left side of the rumble strip, straddling the rumble strip on your way up the track. I'm in sixth gear right here at this point, and then what I do here, my whole thought process for the right-hander is to turn in, and it feels like you're turning in early, but you know, we're going 150 miles an hour, and that's why the car doesn't necessarily react instantly. But it feels like you're turning in early, and my goal is to put the car, my right side tires, on the right side of the curbing on the way up the hill. So right around where my mouse cursor is, somewhere around there, and you'll see how when I turn in, boom, there's where my tires are, right on the right side. I try to avoid getting up on this curb because it can unsettle the car, but we want to put our right side tires on the edge, basically along the white line, all the way up to the hill. We ride that through, so basically we get down to the curb and we kind of ride it for a second, and then as soon as we get to the end of the curbing, straighten our hands again, because if we straighten our hands, that's where the left-hand part coming out of Eau Rouge, the track moves over to the left. A lot of times people will do one of two things. They'll either lift here, which you don't need to do in the GT3, or when they turn in, they'll keep turning and following the candy stripe curb all the way out here to the right. So they'll follow it around and put the car over here and then turn left. You don't need to do that. That's just adding distance that your car has to travel. And then remember, anytime you have any steering angle in your car, you're slowing the car down through friction in the front tires. We want to keep the steering wheel as straight as possible on straightaways so that we can allow the car to accelerate properly. So as soon as I can, I'm trying to straighten this wheel at the top of the hill and draw a straight line, as straight a line as possible to the left-hander to minimize the rolling resistance and help the car accelerate down the straightaway. Again, from La Source all the way down the Kimmel, we're 100% full throttle, 6th gear all the way through there. We should never have to lift. So once you do it right and once you believe that you can take it flat, it becomes a relatively easy corner in this car. All right, going down the Kimmel, this is the best place to get passes done because you get a huge amount of draft. Say you got an awesome run on La Source, get up on somebody, pop out right before the brake zone, and get a nice clean pass done. If we're not passing anybody and we're talking about just the ideal line, my brake mark is basically right at the beginning of the candy stripe curb. So it's the 100 board, but I'm not looking at the board. Again, I'm not looking over to the left. I'm looking over here to the right. So my peripheral, when my front end crosses the candy stripe, I start braking, and it's a threshold brake. I mean, it is a 10 pedal, as much as a 10 pedal ever existed. We want to get this car slowed down, so we're decelerating, downshifting, downshifting, downshifting. I go down to third. I like third through here because it helps me keep my momentum. If I go down to second, which the car can do, I tend to overslow the car in second. So third gear allows me to carry a little bit more mile an hour through, which is great. And then from the turn-in point, is basically just before the end of the candy stripe, but I'm looking over here to where I want the car. And my goal here is my right side tires on the grass. So there's a little bit of extra curbing on the inside of the candy stripe. I'm trying to use all of it. You see my right side tires? They're on this little trellis that is part curbing. It's not actually grass. I want to use as much of that as possible. You will not get a 1X so long as your left side tires are left of the white line or on the white line. If you go over the white line, you'll get the 1X. So turn in, keep the car turned in from the left one, or for the right-hander, in order to set up the left-hander a little bit, and very late apex on the left-hander as best we can. We don't want to go past mid-track. Keep the rotation going with the car to try to move the car over to the left as much as we can. You don't have to be on the curb, but we want to be over here in this realm as best as we can to set up for the only corner that actually matters in this complex, which is the right-hander at the end, because it leads to a little mini straightaway. So this is the important corner. Again, like the first right-hander, we want to use and touch this curbing. It'll help rotate the car a bit on the way through, and then back on the throttle using all of the run out that we're allowed to maximize the amount of track that we have. So if I back it up and show it again in slow motion without me stopping and starting it, turn in just before the candy stripe curbing, third gear, right side tires, up on the curb, mid-track, turn into the left, late apex, it'll put us about mid-track, and then final turn in, which is the corner that actually matters. The way to get to that final corner right here, I just do a lift. I actually don't even brake for it. because everything through this section is kind of lifting, other than the original brake for the first right-hander coming off the Kimmel, everything is just the throttle. So it's throttle, then lift off the throttle, and then feedback on the throttle, and then off the throttle, maintenance throttle as the car turns in, and then back on the throttle when I know the car is going to make the corner. Don't even need to touch the brake through there.
Zero trail braking.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any question through La Source, through whatever the name of that corner is? I don't even know. Okay, cool. All right. Coming into a rundown into the tight right-hander, the closest thing to a hairpin outside of La Source is another brake zone, which starts right at the candy stripe curbing. That's the nice thing about this track is almost every single brake zone starts right at the curbing. So the brake is right here at the curbing. We want to keep the wheel straight. Again, threshold braking, 10 pedal, but we're going to bleed off of it pretty darn quick. Thing to remember, everything is running downhill and we're off camber. So the car is really not going to want to turn in. The car is really going to fight you. So the front end is going to be chattering away, trying to understeer out. Because there's no camber helping us, and then everything's falling away. So we're going to stay on the brake longer than we normally would. And the only reason we're doing that is to keep some semblance of weight on the front tires to give them a little bit extra bite so they will actually turn the car. Once we get to about halfway around the corner, we'll pretty much get off the brake pedal and roll the momentum as best we can through the corner after we've already started our turn in. So I'm starting to get off of it. And then at this point, as you can see, right around here, I'm starting to try to get off the brake to try to roll my speed. I don't want to scrub. I want to stop the retardation of my speed as early as I can to carry the speed around. I don't want to keep on the pedal too long because that leads to over slowing the car. So I'm trying to roll speed. In this case, I overcooked it a little bit. Notice how my car starts to run a little bit wide. So I get back on the brake to try to get that nose tucked in a little bit. But eventually the car is going to take a set and it's going to start to tuck. The nose is going to start to tuck back in at a tighter radius than the corner itself. And ideally what we want to do is we want to try to apex this big, long right-hander, I'd say about 3/4 of the way around the corner itself. So you can see I've picked up the throttle. My apex point is right here. So about 3/4 of the way, or maybe 2/3 of the way through the corner. It's definitely on the latter half of the corner. And I'm in second gear to get a good run out, to get a nice run coming out. If we do that correctly, then we'll be in second gear. We'll be right on the edge of the track, able to get the car over to the right. We'll do an upshift to third. I think I'm in third. Let me just check. Yeah, I'm in third gear to set up for the left-hander. And the left-hander is just a little breathe of the brake to set the front in. And when I say set the front in, I mean add a little bit of weight to the nose. So when you turn the wheel, the front tires have a little bit extra grip because they're being pressed into the ground to the weight. And it's setting the front end so it'll actually turn in. And to slow the car just a touch. And I pressed the wrong button, so give me a second. All the way through, back to where we were. Okay, so just touch the brake pedal here to get a little bit of a set of the corner, and then off the brake pedal and carry the momentum through. Again, much like the previous corner, we're going downhill. We have a little bit of camber right at the apex that's helping us out, unlike the tighter right-hander, but we're still headed downhill. So we still have this lack of grip in the car if it's not ideal. You can touch this curbing if you want. Just beware that if you go up on it too much, this is a pretty aggressive 1X area. I've picked up 1Xs here at the apex plenty of times by taking too much curbing. So I like to just nibble it. It helps turn the car a little bit. And then when we know we're going to make the corner, boom, back full throttle. This was not a 1X. As long as you keep your left side tires on the candy stripe, you're good. If you take any part of your left side tires over the candy stripe, you will get a 1X here. So use all of the available track to maximize your speed through there. So let me back it up and show what that looks like again. Coming in, brake, downshift to second, roll the speed in, keep a little bit of trail brake to keep the weight on the front end. You can see the car trying to turn. Eventually it'll take a tighter radius. There it is. And then as soon as it does, boom, back to full throttle, second gear, grab third, move the car over to the right so it's a constant turn, tap of the brakes while turning in, roll the speed through, and then feet on the throttle nice and gingerly and all the way to full throttle just after apex to get a good run going through there. All right, coming into Puan, probably one of the more difficult corners on the track because it's so high speed. I was leaving it in fifth gear all the way to the brake zone. I was not hitting the rev limiter, so I suggest just leaving it at fifth. No need to shift to sixth. The lights are going to be flashing at you saying shift, but you are going to be braking in a couple hundred meters, so it doesn't matter anyway. So fifth gear, I like to brake pretty much, it feels like 2/3 of the way down the candy stripe curving. It's a difficult brake zone in the sense that there's not really much, there's no lines on the road. You've got something over here, like you got the 13 flag station, but that's too far off to the right to really use reliably. I just kind of use what this particular corner feels like, and it's right about here. If you can find a particular marker here, great, share it with the class, but I don't have a specific marker of where I brake here. It's just kind of this corner looks this way, and I know when I get to that sight picture, that's when I'm hitting the brake. And then my mantra coming through here is it's a quick maybe 8 pedal, and then as soon as I hit that 8 pedal, I start turning in and I start backing off it. So it's a very quick brake and then immediately off the brake, or start trail braking it off, with the idea of just throwing the car into this entry. Again, we're going downhill, but we do have a little bit of camber on entry, so we're going to get an actual decent turn in, and then the camber is going to kind of go away about mid corner, and the car is going to try to understeer about halfway through. I treat this corner as a double apex, so my first apex is going to be right around here, and then the car is going to kind of drift out about just over halfway from mid-track, and then tuck back in for the second apex, which will be the curbing on the end. So you can see here I turned in, downshift to fourth gear. There's apex 1. I missed it just a touch, but that's okay. We're carrying our momentum. Notice I'm already on full throttle at this point, so I've gotten all my slowing down of the car done, and boom, back to full throttle. And when I go to full throttle, what does that do for the balance of the car? That's taking the car and moving the weight and shifting the weight to the rear tires. I'm pushing those big fat Michelins into the track, and it's giving me grip where I need it, in the rear of the car. I've got a lot of lateral load in the car going around this corner. I need all the grip in the rear as much as possible in order to make sure I don't spin the car. Where people get in trouble in Puhan is they turn in, realize, oh, I'm going too fast, and then they tend to lift off the gas to try to slow themselves down while they've got a ton of load in the car. As soon as you do that, you take the weight off the rear gets light, you take grip away from the rear tires, you add them to the front. Guess what? The front grips up, the rear has no grip, and you tend to loop the car when that happens. So coming through just past mid-track, keeping a constant steering angle the entire time, and then there's the second apex. If you do it right, when you turn in for Puhan, you pretty much hold that angle all the way through with full throttle. The only time I start to open my hands a little bit is when I start to feel the car try to slide around a little bit on me, and then I just open my hands a little bit to allow more grip into the car. So the less steering angle, the more grip I'm giving the tires for lateral, for acceleration, just more grip in general. I'm not asking them to turn. So that's how I manipulate the staying on the edge of grip through Puhan, is using my steering to control the slide of the car. So we go back here and show it again at full speed, or without stopping it. So brake, downshift to fourth, tuck it in, off the brake, start feeding on throttle smoothly, and then back to full throttle, holding that steering angle all the way through. Second apex is down here. Grab fifth and let the car run over the rumbles to get a good run coming through Puhan. Coming into campus, I want to say is what it's called. Again, candy stripe curbing on the left. Great reference point to be able to brake. Boom. I brake just a little bit before it. Go down to third gear. And much like, somebody remind me, what is the complex after the Kimmel Straight? Anybody?
That place.
That place.
Lacombe.
Lacombe. Okay, yes, Lacombe.
Oh, thank you.
So this is very similar to Lacombe, except that the entry is much faster. So it's the same concept, though, as Lacombe. So we break in, third gear. What I'm trying to do is keep the car all the way on the curb on the right. It's going to help the car turn a little bit, and it's going to open up the left-hander, which is the important corner. So that's a throwaway corner. We don't want to go. We want to keep the car as far right as possible to set up this left-hander because that's the important one. We turn in here, still in third gear. Imperative you touch this curb. It helps turn the car. As soon as you get up on that curb, you'll see you'll feel the car start to turn. If you miss this curb, the car tends to just understeer and you tend to have to overslow the car to get around it. If you just nibble that curb just a little bit right at the apex, you get a little bit more rotation right there and you're set at a better angle. So you can actually see the car kind of turn in, touch this curb. You'll get a little bit of rotation right there, just a touch, and it helps you get a better angle coming through. And we want to roll the speed through. So unlike Lacombe, coming out of this corner, we don't have a right-hander to set up for immediately after, so we can track all the way out to the edge and accelerate down this little tiny chute. We're going to brake just before the candy stripe curbing again, down to third gear. And the goal is we want to be on the curb, left side tires as close to the grass as we can to open up the entry. Brake, turn in, downhill. Not a whole lot of camber helping us. There's a lot of understeer right here at the turn-in point. It always feels like I'm overslowing the car, but you have to. You got to slow this car down somehow to be able to get it down to the curbing. I see a lot of drivers completely miss this apex, which is not good because this corner leads on to the second longest straightaway on the track. So this is actually the second most important corner on the track. You got to get a good run coming through here so you can go all the way to the bus stop right before start finish. So again, brake right at just before the candy stripe curbing, up on the curb. Always feels like I'm turning in early here, but it's just because there's no grip in the front because of the way the track's set up. So you're going to understeer. You got to plan for it. So it's an early turn in, it feels like. Apex on the back half of this corner. So if you're really going to get down and technical on it, take a look to see where you're hitting this in a replay. There should be the end of this little trellis curbing on the inside of the candy stripe curbing. That's my apex point. You can see how late it is around the corner. So take a look to see where you're apexing versus where I'm apexing. If you're running wide on the exit, I can almost guarantee you're apexing somewhere around here. If you're not running wide, you're doing it right and you're apexing late. So make sure you're taking a late apex through here. Third gear, the key is to get to throttle as early as possible. We can take all of this curbing. The only time it's going to get to a 1X is if your right side tires cross over the candy stripe. So as long as you're here with the right side tires on the candy stripe, you're good. We'll turn in, grab fourth, and it should be absolute flat. This is a late apex right-hander, even though it's flat. But the only way you can do it is by apexing really late. I'm apexing almost where the curb ends, so just before the end of the curb. We're opening our hands through here because remember, if we keep too much steering angle in the car while we're accelerating, it's going to slow the rate of acceleration due to the friction we're adding to it. We want to minimize the rotational friction that we're allowing the car when we're trying to go full throttle. So we open our hands up to enable the car to accelerate at the proper rate without too much turning. Coming into Blanchimont, it's easy flat with this setup in this track state. The key to Blanchimont basically is keep your eyes up. If you're looking 2 feet in front of your car, you're always going to be surprised by Blanchimont. If you're looking through the corner where you want the car to go, it makes Blanchimont a lot easier. So keep your eyes up, look through the corner, don't look immediately right in front of you. And we treat it like a normal apex. It's just a fast kink in a track. Get a point where you see from the cockpit what this curbing looks like to you on your screen. And then that's going to, so for me, when I'm coming into here, I'm looking at the curbing, and when I can see a significant amount of this entry curbing, I know I can turn in for it and make the corner. But that's because that's my sight picture. Your seating position may be a little bit different. It's not that scary of a corner because you got to know that on your way out, you can be opening your hands and being very quiet when I say quiet, very slow and methodical with your hands. We're not making fast movements. We're not making fast corrections. It's just very boring, very slow. And that keeps the car beneath you, keeps it balanced, and allows you to take it without any drama. The other thing I'll say about Blanchimont is on your way through, coming through, where's the safe area in Blanchimont? It's on the right. Look, it's all paved. It's basically track, right? So if you start to get, the car starts to get squirrely through Blanchimont, the rear end starts to wiggle a little bit, all you got to do is open your hands. Don't try to fight it and try to be a hero and save it. Take your 1X, go wide out here, collect the car, and bring it back nice and safely. Where people get in trouble with Blanchimont is the back end starts to wiggle on them, and they try to save it without going off track, either by adding steering angle or counter steering really fast and trying to save it, and they end up either snapping it over to the right wall or, more often than not, losing it over to the left. Just open your hands. If you feel like you're going to start to lose the car, just start opening your hands a little earlier. The worst thing you can do is get off the throttle. So if you're going through there and you're like, oh no, I'm going too fast, or my angle wasn't right, and you hop off that throttle mid-corner, you're guaranteed going to spin the car because you're taking all the weight off the grippy tires in the rear. So commit to it. Understand that if you blow through it, just open your hands and make the corner a little wider and take your 1X and learn for next time.
Chris, where's the 1X here?
It's the same thing. This one's really, really close, but I want to say if you get your, we can actually look at the rules. It should say specifically. Yeah, so it's the edge of the red, white curbing on corner exit. So right here, if you get your left side tires on the edge, like at the grading here, if it like touches the grading, you're going to pick up a 1X. So you can use a lot of the curbing on the way out. You don't need to, like the car is perfectly fine tracking out to this point. Like I'm actually driving the car out here to try to minimize the scrub from the front tires, but you can go out a little bit further than this. The key though is to make sure that your left side tires get back across the white line before the end of the curbing, before this like teal spot. If you're on this line and you cross over into the teal, you will pick up a 1X. So you got to get back over before you hit the steel. That's it. Another thing people tend to do coming out of Blanchimont is they tend to come through Blanchimont and then move the car over instantly. You don't have to. You're traveling additional distance than if you don't. So my kind of secret through here is just maintain your line. You come out, park the car right there, boom, and just ride it through and ride a nice tight on the way into the entry into the brake zone. There's no reason to move the car all the way over to the left. I used to do it all the time until somebody told me I was doing it, and then I said, okay, and now I just keep it straight. So, and usually when I'm out racing, both in public sessions at Spa and in PCA, I'd say 90% of the folks move the car over to the left immediately for some reason. Doesn't make sense. Keep it nice and straight. Final brake zone of the lap is going into the bus stop. We have a nice convenient white line, which is hey, the brake zone's coming up. This is not the brake point. The brake point is about another 50 meters further, but this is a really good indicator of you're coming up on the brake zone. So I'll see that in my peripheral, and then I'll know I need to brake a heartbeat later. If you really want to get where I'm starting to look is much like turn 1, there's this like tan area on the track. It's kind of dusty. I am braking about a car's length into that tan area is where I'm getting on the brakes. Full threshold braking, move the car all the way over to the left side tires on the rumble to open up the right-hander, downshift all the way to first gear, and then the key with the bus stop is don't ride the brakes through it. Once you turn in and you commit to this first turn-in point, get off the brakes and roll speed. A lot of times people just sit on the brakes for some reason all the way through, and by the time you get to the second turn, the left-hander, you're parked basically. You're not going anywhere. Off the brakes, a little bit of threshold braking on the way through the first one. Keep the car about mid-track to set up for the left-hander. And it's just a lift of the throttle to get the car to tuck in for the left-hander, and then back on the throttle coming out. Remember, the first part of the bus stop does not matter. It's all about the second. If we do it right, we get a good run in first gear coming out, and we complete our lap. And for those keeping score at home, that was a 17.9. All right. Any questions before we do just the full speed without me stopping?
What was your track temp, Chris?
It's cold, 65. It's cold as it gets. So if you're not doing, if you're out there doing 18s, 19s, 20s, 21s, be sure to look at your track temp, because if you're at 100 degrees, then that's fine. I probably would be doing 18s if I was at 100 degrees, maybe even 19s. Track temp does change it significantly, so don't get discouraged if you can't get down to 17. There's no, if you're doing 17s in any condition, frankly, you should probably be in pro. So, okay, so let's start it off, and like I said, I will stopping it. So coming into turn 1, we're gonna brake right at about the 100 board, right at the end of the tan, down to first gear, off the brake, add throttle, open the hands as we come through to allow grip to the rear tires to accelerate. We're going to run through the gears all the way up into 6th gear. We're keeping the throttle pinned all the way through. We're going to turn in, straddle the first curbing, turn in, ride that inside curb just a touch, and then straight line the second one to maximize our speed and the rate of acceleration through there. Checking our mirrors, our dials, our fuel, checking tires, just doing mental relaxation before the brake zone, which is right at the candy stripe. Boom, down to 3rd gear, up on the curb, off the gas, back on the gas. It's all manipulation of the gas through here. Touch the curb and then back on the gas. I'm gonna brake at the candy stripe curbing, go down to 2nd gear, trail brake in, get off the brake, roll speed when it starts to tuck in, and then back on throttle. 3rd gear, a little bit of a lift, and then back on, letting the car run out. Coming into Puhan, we're gonna brake about 2/3 of the way down the curve, down to 4th gear. Then we're gonna get off the brake, add throttle smoothly, and keep a constant steering angle all the way through, letting the car just go where it wants to go. Brake at the candy stripe curving, down to 3rd gear. Keep it nice and tight. Keep it tight, keep it tight. Mid-track, turn in, and then back on throttle as soon as we touch that curb so we can get a good run through. Brake at the candy stripe curbing, early turn in because of the understeer, and then back on the throttle, get a nice run all the way to 4th gear before the turn in point. Ride it all the way through 5th gear, gonna go all the way to 6th gear for Blanchimont. You're gonna keep it pinned all the way through. Keep it nice and tight on the left-hander here because it's just a shorter distance. Nice and wide in, eyes up, look through the corner, nice smooth, soft hands. Keep it straight. Looking for the white line to signify braking. Brake at the tan point, brake, down to 1st gear. Off the brake, roll the speed through. Off the throttle, back on the throttle, coming through to get a good run. And that is a lap of Spa. Any questions? Cool, you guys are experts now. You're good to go with Spa. I did have something I wanted to show you guys, which was a little bit of racecraft at Spa specifically. Now it's a different set of cars. This is GT1 because it was there last week, but I had an incredible battle with first place here. And it can kind of show you some of the racecraft and some of the mind games you can play with other folks in passing areas in at Spa. And so I thought it would be relevant to kind of show and talk through a couple of laps, the final couple laps of this particular race, to explain what I'm thinking when it comes to racecraft. Because it's one thing to go around and drive quickly and do qualifying laps. It's another thing completely to actually race. If it was just qualifying laps and the fastest lap you can take, then we would just have time trials and that would be it, and we wouldn't race. But that's not what we do. We race. So racecraft is incredibly important at a track like this in order to maximize our speed going through. All right, any questions real quick before we get into this? No? Somebody's got to have something. Jim? My mic on? You guys can still hear me, right?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Cool. Just making sure. Okay. So,
Chris, I do have a question.
Yeah.
Since you're asking for one. Consistency. I have fast laps and I have not fast laps back to back. How do I develop? And this is just at this track. How do I develop the consistency to be able to hit the within a couple of tenths every lap? I'm just struggling with that.
So consistency comes with two things. It comes with mastery of the track and the car combo that you're comfortable with. And then two, it's also driving within the means of your vehicle. If you go out there and try to set a qualifying lap every single time you drive, you could overheat the tires. And if you do that, then the next lap is not going to be as fast because you don't have the grip. The tires are too hot. So I would much rather see your fast laps get a little bit slower in order for your slow laps to get faster, right? The whole point is to try to get your average lap time to be quicker, not to have a spiky fast lap and then a slow lap in response to it. So drive to where, if it means you've got to drive at 95% to get consistent laps, then drive 95%. Your tires will thank you for it, and then your fuel economy may actually thank you for it too. You spend less time in the pits, so you actually lower your overtime.
Let me modify the question actually that I get. I ran 10 mid-18s, 10 laps mid-18. Next day I come out and I'm high 19s.
Oh, okay.
Same setup, same track, same everything. It's me, not the car, not the track. It's me.
Ah, okay. Well, that's a good.
How do I become consistent so that I've got that? Everything was clicking when I was in the mid-18s. Entering and exiting spot on, and now I can't find it.
I would suggest take a look at your data on what you were doing in the 18s relative to the 19s. There's got to be something that is consistent that you're going to see throughout the data and the squiggly lines. Ideally, they should be right on top of each other. And if they are, then boom, you should be doing the same lap time. So any variation, any variation is going to tell you, hey, I'm braking too early. I'm staying on the brake too much. I'm overslowing the car. Without looking at data, I can't tell you why that's the case. But the data should tell you exactly where the speed has vanished to. And so really take a look and be hypercritical of yourself to try to find out why has my pace dropped off. And I'm happy to sit down and take a look at the 19s and the 18s with you to kind of glean some differences.
Maybe green versus rubber in track.
It could be that too. Just because the track temp is the same doesn't mean it's the same speed, because a rubbered in track is going to have more grip than a green track. So keep that in mind. I mean, when we talk all the parameters of the car, track temp is just one. It's probably the major one, but how green the track is also, and that's absolutely right, Joachim. So we got to make sure all the variables are the same. And if all the variables are the same, then it's the driver. That's the non-consistent variable, right? So make sure that as well. So, okay. I'm conscious of time as well because I know that the EDE is going to be starting soon, but I just wanted to show you guys what this kind of looked like. So again, like fighting for P1, which is the car in front. I've been following them for, goodness, how many laps are we in? So I've been following the guy for like 14 laps at this point. And he has pace. I don't have the pace to pass him just on raw performance alone. The only time I tend to get close to him is in draft right here, where these cars are incredibly susceptible to draft. But it's never enough to get alongside of him. So he goes defensive here because we're coming up to the end. So he's driving, at this point, he's driving a defensive line. And look what he did. He didn't move over to go defensive at the last second, unpredictably. He did it as soon as he possibly could. So we're coming out of a Rouge. We're at the midpoint. He actually never goes to the racing line. He immediately, after coming after this, takes his defensive line. And he has basically told me, this is the line I'm going to take. I'm going to be defensive. If you're going to pass me, you're going to do it on the outside. That is an incredibly good heads up way to race. We don't want to be taking defensive lines at the brake zone, for instance, unpredictably, because that's not good. We want to be predictable, and we want to prevail on telling the following car what your intention is. I intend to defend here. You know what I'm going to do. It's up to you to try to make it around the outside on me. So at this point, I get the run coming in. I know he's taking it defensive, so I can try to go around the outside. And I'm going to pop out to far chase so we can kind of see what this looks like. I get alongside of him, but because he has the defensive line, we both break in. He takes a really good line coming in. I don't necessarily know where he is. I just know he's on the inside of the corner, meaning that I have to allow for him to be there, right? And by doing that, he's able to dive a little closer, take a little bit more speed on the entry, and clear me so he can take a clean line coming through. At this point, I realize, okay, he's got back by me. I'm going to have to tuck in. There is an opportunity coming out of Lacombe right here before the right-hander that a lot of people don't protect. And that is, as you come through this left-hander, if you gun it, right, the racing line is you go about mid-track and then you move over to the left to set up for the right-hander, right? But if you're racing someone on a racecraft, an opportunity to pass, especially if it's coming into the waning laps, is to gun it and treat this left-hander as the racing line, as a traditional line. Track all the way out, get by the car, get alongside of him, and take away the inside. So when you take the right-hander, you're going to be slow, but you want them to be slow too because you're on the inside, right? So you want them to have to sacrifice. So that's what I try to do here. Come in. He takes the traditional line. I move over to try to make this move, but I'm just not close enough, and the car just doesn't have enough grunt to get up alongside of him in time for the right-hander. So I realize that and immediately kind of back out. I don't want to send it in there and have just like a tiny bit of overlap and right on his fender, because if he turns down and then I turn him, from a penalty situation, it would be on me because I didn't have enough overlap to make that move work. I'm showing him the inside. I'm showing my nose for him to, I'm trying to play with his mirrors, right? I'm trying to fill his mirrors up as much as possible so he's paying attention to me and less on his line. So that's why I moved over for the hairpin, so he could see that I'm here. I may dive him. It makes him modify his line to protect and makes him think of me rather than just forget me and run qualifying laps. Gets a little bit of a distance on me coming through, but I'm at this point just trying to set up. None of these corners are really on somebody that has the same pace as you. None of these corners are passing corners. They're too fast. It's just impossible to get alongside someone. So you kind of just get in a groove, stay in their baffles, stay close enough to where they're thinking about you, but at the same time, you don't want them to get scared and make a mistake and potentially wreck and take you with it. So here we go. We're coming down into Blanchimont. Again, another opportunity to draft up on somebody and make a run going into the bus stop. One of the things I do coming into Blanchimont is you could get right up on the rear bumper of somebody all the way to the beginning of Blanchimont, but that doesn't really do any good because if you get all the way to the rear bumper before Blanchimont, you can't go too wide through Blanchimont. You've got to slow down. So the best thing to do is try to time the point that you get to their rear bumper. And you want to time it so you're getting to their rear bumper on the exit of Blanchimont, so you have the momentum to slingshot around them before the brake zone for the bus stop. If you catch them before Blanchimont, you lose all your momentum, and you're now going the same speed through Blanchimont, which means you have no momentum to get by them before the brake zone. So keep that in mind. So I'm like kind of the good distance right here. So as we go through, my momentum catches him at the end. Now he had a great run through there, so it's difficult. He takes a defensive line, as you can see, forcing me to the outside. We take it nice and tight, and I just kind of tuck in, knowing I've got one more lap to try to pass him on the Kimmel. So white flag, gloves are off at this point. P3 is like 10-20 seconds behind, so it's just, this is the fight. So I know I can take chances. I know that if we're slow together because we're too wide, I'm not going to risk losing my podium spot or my second spot. Second is the worst that it's going to happen unless I wreck. So again, I want to catch him at the top of Eau Rouge, not before. So right here, I want to be gaining on him and then use that momentum to get right up on his bumper. There's the defense. We bump a little bit here. And the reason the bump happened is because I put the car in that position, but I did it on purpose. So as I come up alongside of him, he takes a defensive line. I want him to take the corner from the right side of the track because he's going to be slow. I don't want to give him, I don't want to move all the way over to the left side of the track and give him the ability to squeeze me to the outside and take the corner as fast as I can, or essentially as fast as I can. I want him to be as handicapped as possible going into the right-hander and Lacombe. So what do? When I pop out, I park the car right next to him. I could easily be over here on the left side of the track, but I want to be right here, so it forces him to this very narrow lane. And theoretically, what the idea is that he can't turn. He has to turn in from that super shallow area, and then right before the brake zone, I pop out to the edge, and I have that much of more of a significant advantage on speed going through the corner. Now, he's not paying attention, and he kind of just moves over and bumps me enough to where I've got to actually hit the brakes because we get out of sorts. And frankly, if this was a stewardship, I'd say that's on him. I'm here. I've parked the car here. I've declared a line. I haven't swerved. I haven't done anything. He's the one that makes contact by dooring me coming through here. So it's perfectly reasonable to park your car along and force the opponent that's defending to a really shallow area. I mean, that's the downside of defending so aggressively is you can get pinched down to the inside. I eventually, when we tap, he realizes I was there and not giving him room to move all the way over to the left. So he takes the line out here, but unfortunately he already bumped me enough to where it hampered my ability to kind of get my momentum through there. So we get to the same point again where I've got to follow him through the first part of Lacombe, but I'm going to try to gun it again, exactly like last time. And here I had a little bit more overlap, but not enough. I could have sent it in there, but if I did, it would have been super risky. If he turns down, then we both get turned. So I pull out of it. To his credit, he gave me a little bit of room in case I did try it, but we didn't actually go through it. All right, let's go back to cockpit. Traditional line through here because I'm not close enough, and I realize that my opportunities are getting very, very small. I've got maybe 2 opportunities left on the entire track to make this move happen. Well, that was a 1X, by the way. All right, so coming into Puong, all I'm trying to do is stay as close as I can to create pressure to maybe force him to miss a brake area or brake zone, force him to overdrive into a corner or overslow. I want him focused on me, not on his line. But to his credit, he does a fantastic job of maintaining his composure. And then my whole goal is coming out of these double right-hander is to be as close as possible to him coming out of Blanchimont. And he does something a little cheeky here. So as we're coming through here, as I mentioned the lap before, I don't want to catch him before Blanchimont. I want to catch him after Blanchimont, right? He takes a super defensive line, as you can see, and then he actually kind of lifts a little bit here to try to back me up, almost to the dismay of him. Now we make a little bit of contact because he lifted really early, but he did that in a way so my run, I have to slow down coming up into Blanchimont, exactly as I'd mentioned before, and kill all momentum I had. So when we come out of Blanchimont, we're going the equal speed and accelerating. There's no way I could catch him. If he would have stayed the constant speed, I would have caught him after Blanchimont and just slungshot by him like he was sitting still. But he kind of slowed it down a little bit somehow. I think he did a tiny little lift. And then we come into the final corner, and this is where it gets a little bit dicey. So he takes what I would call a defensive line right here. Like he's braking already. You can see his brake lights. He's braking from the middle of the track. At that point, I realize, okay, he's going to be taking defensive like he's been doing the entire time. So I decide I'm going to try to go around the outside to put myself on the inside for the final corner. However, when he brakes in a straight line. There's nothing wrong with what he does. He brakes in a straight line along kind of an angle to get to the outside to take the corner. So at this point, he's braking in a normally completely defensive position. I've already committed to the outside, so I'm kind of stuck. But what ends up happening is he just completely delays turning in. So he's delaying. See how slow he is? Delaying, and then driving his car to the outside all the way through. If you looked at the lap before, he was online. Every single lap prior, he was online. But here he drives really through and all the way out to the edge of the track. Good defense on his part. Almost a problem in the sense that he does it. Like if I would have maintained my position on the outside, he would have driven me off the track, right? There's no room out here. But I pulled out of it because the idea was I was going to try to undercut him because I thought he was going to be slow here. But as always, he puts himself in a perfect spot on defense coming through, and he ends up pulling off the victory over me despite my best efforts. So the big thing, the big takeaway here is that I wanted to show was racecraft is not qualifying, not going as fast as you possibly can. It's putting your car in a position to maintain, to force them to have to drive to a certain speed. You dictate as the leading car, you drive in a way that is, one, predictable, but two, makes it difficult for the other car to get by you. They've got to either go the long way around, or they got to try to figure out a way to get around you without hitting you, right? And two, the racecraft portion is incredibly important to actually win a race. Just because you go out there and set the pole, if you find yourself in third or fourth place and you don't know how to race anybody, actively race somebody, you're never going to be able to make those positions and move through a field without causing mayhem or having other problems. So the racecraft is incredibly important to be able to actually race instead of just going out there and running qualifying laps. The best way to tone your racecraft and learn what works and what doesn't is to practice what you want to do, which is race. So practice race as much as possible. Don't just go out and do hot laps over and over and over again. That's great for learning a track and getting up to speed. But I would argue just running hot laps or just practicing with hot laps doesn't teach you how to race. And the only way one of the wonderful things about iRacing and the tool that we have is we have the ability to do AI racing. We have the ability to jump into things like official races, to actually race against human beings whenever we want. It doesn't matter if it is Skip Barber open wheel cars or NASCARs or GT1 cars or the Porsches we know and love. Get out there and race, because what you learn from trying different things in a race setting against other people will just build and build and build your encyclopedia or your portfolio of things you've tried or things you know that will work or that won't work. Are you going to make great passes and, and it's going to be all lights and cameras? Absolutely not. You're going to make boneheaded decisions to dive down the inside of someone, and there's going to be contact and you're going to wreck. But there will be some times where something will actually work. And then you'll file that away in your head and you'll say, okay, I know that move worked. You'll try it again. Hey, it worked again. Oh, I try it again. Oh, it didn't work that time. Well, why didn't it work? And that's how you learn to build how to racecraft, is by doing. You can't sit in a lecture about racecraft and then just all of a sudden know how to race your fellow competitor. You actually have to try it. So get out there and race is my kind of the point I'm trying to make here. Don't just hot lap. You'll be a better driver for it. If you look at me personally, I am not the fastest guy on grid. I very rarely qualify inside the top 5. I usually am somewhere between 6th and 10th. But guess what? I tend to end up pretty close to the podium, if not on the podium. And it's because I'm making passes and I'm racing people, not because of pure pace. So just keep that in mind. Any questions about that? Okay. No. Perfect. All right. Well, I've gone over time. So thanks for sticking it out, guys. If you do have any questions, I'll hang them out for a couple minutes. But if not, go check out the EDEs that should be starting or have started already. They should be in the hosted section. Is that correct? Let me see. Maybe not. Oh yeah, PCA EDE right here. So Chris Braun is hosted. If you click that and you join the hosted session, you should be able to get in there. There'll be other instructors in there. So if you want one-on-ones or anything like that, be sure to ask them. They may also do some drills and stuff, passing drills and things like that. But the whole goal of that is to get people up to speed and get comfortable with, with racing, as we were just talking about. So other than that, I will leave you for that. I will stop the recording. Thanks for watching, and good luck this week. Have fun, be safe, and we'll chat in a couple of weeks for one where I think VAR is the next track. and we'll talk about some things that we learned, what worked, what didn't, and we'll learn a new track at VIR. So thanks again for joining us, and I'll see you in a couple weeks.